Hey folks, and welcome to this week's News and Community Spotlight. Were you unable to attend Unreal Fest 2022 or missed our live coverage? Whether you're interested in games, media and entertainment, architecture, simulation, automotive, or a range of cross-industry, we have over 75 presentations now live on the Unreal Engine YouTube channel and the Epic developer community. Dive in at unrealengine.com/events. While there, learn how you can experience many of the ways Unreal Engine is transforming the simulation industry through innovative real-time solutions. Join the UE simulation team at ITSEC 2022, where we'll present several live demonstrations of simulation solutions with UE at their core. Speaking of simulation, earlier this year, Epic Games introduced the Antoinette Project, a new set of resources that include tutorials, tools, and a proof-of-concept flight simulator running on Unreal Engine. Now, learn even more about the Antoinette project along with VR and AR, photorealism and accuracy, interfaces and pipelines, and more from evolving simulation trends over at unrealengine.com/feed. Aerial combat has been a big draw since the days of Howard Hughes. Learn how Vega Entertainment Technologies applied Unreal Engine and real-time rendering to the aerial sequences of the Disney Plus Hotstar series Chauvet, becoming one of the first TV productions to use it in India. Learn how they took off and landed with style using Unreal Engine on the feed. Germany-based indie development studio Spaceflower are united in a passion for creating artistic and innovative games, and Let Them Trade, a peaceful and relaxing economic simulation strategy inspired by real-life board games, is no different. Want to learn more about the game's mechanics, why the studio chose Unreal Engine 5, and their favorite UE5 features? You know where to go, the feed. Moving over to this week's Community Spotlights, Mega Grant recipient and multi-award winning motion graphics artist Jonathan Winbush has a perfectly curated tutorial series where you can learn Unreal Engine 5 in 5 days. Day 1 covers getting familiar with UE5 and prepping for Day 2, where you create projects from scratch. Learn more about the tutorial series and UE5 over on their YouTube channel. In their first submission to an ArtStation challenge, Corey Billett used Flora Silv's Baroff Circle concept art to craft the unbelievable scene that is Forgotten Realms: The Breath. Journey to their ArtStation to dive into their project breakdown and how they tackled the challenge using Unreal Engine. In their latest tutorial, 3D artist and VFX mastermind William Fauché breaks down their workflow and process for capturing Lofoten in Unreal Engine 5. They showcase the creation of everything you see in the charmingly beautiful intro, from the ocean, the mountains, and how he scanned an old Arctic cabin with the help of reality capture. Step to their ArtStation to learn more and let them know what you think. Thanks for watching. Catch you next week.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I'm your host, Tina, and today with me I have two incredible guests. First up, Mai, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Tina. Nice to be back. I'm Mai. I am a technical artist working for SideFX Houdini. Today, I'm back to talk about some photogrammetry stuff with my friend here.
Very excited to get into it,
Tina.
and thank you so much for coming back. Yes, and then, of course, next and certainly not least, Ivan, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Tina. Hi, everyone. I'm Ivan, artist, architect, and designer from Ukraine, and I do a lot of stuff, mostly related to environments and cultural heritage.
Awesome. So exciting. I cannot wait to get into the stuff today. Photogrammetry. I know I was saying this a little bit before the show started, but it is one of my favorite things to learn about and to explore and just look at in general. It's modern day wizardry, in my opinion. So I'm very, very excited to see what y'all brought for us today. So who would like to kick us off? Tell us a little bit about what we're going to be going into.
Yeah, probably I will just start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Or maybe we'll just make it like an ongoing conversation. We'll see. Okay, so I'll probably then will go to share my screen, and so we'll do some kind of presentation here. So basically, I'll just start it off like that with some intro, so you don't have any questions. Because usually, when you describe yourself, it's a little bit weird. Then, like you're saying, "Oh, I'm an artist," so you can see a bit of my stuff. And I'll just got some. If you want to contact me, feel free to reach on these links. And I did it for the reason so we don't get distracted and carried away later, because it's terrible to switch the theme. And as well, I wanted to say a bit that. Actually, I do work as well at a family-run business. Me and my family, we have a gallery in Ukraine, and we do a lot of stuff related to fine art. And actually, the project itself is kind of one of the projects we are working on right now at the gallery. So, as you can see, the theme of our show today will be recreating Ukrainian heritage sites with Unreal Engine and Houdini. And this is our amazing demo shot from Unreal. And hopefully, if we'll have some time enough on the stream, we'll get to it a bit later, because I felt like it will be pretty cool to keep the whole stuff hierarchical. So we start from the project itself and how we started and what we did so far. And this is as the last stage of it will be the last one, so like a pinnacle on this stream, something like that. And let's see, really short small videos, so you can get an idea that this is animated, and it runs on Unreal Engine 5 using the cool nanite and love. Probably, as I said, we're gonna talk a bit about it later on. There is interesting stuff on, and as we said, it's not photogrammetry, but actually some cool and advanced technology. And we're talking about the laser scanning. So let's get back to the project itself. There is no particular name right now, so we'll call it just like Ukrainian heritage or castles. Mostly it's about the castles for now. We are a small, really small team, so we had to decide on the scope early on. So for now, we are working only with the castles. And as you can see in the red in here, this is like a tiny zone area where we are located is outside. It's like the most western part of Ukraine, but it still has some interesting sites. And we have a number of old castles. And actually, you'll see two of them today. So yeah, what we're doing, we are taking these castles and we are recreating them in virtual spaces. And when I'm talking about making the media products, we are actually not only talking about the Unreal scene as well. We are going deeper than that, and we want to do a lot of stuff connected to it, like videos and materials and all other like content. I will talk about it a bit later. But yeah, and if this is gonna be pretty successful, hopefully, we'll try to increase our scope to other cultural heritage objects in the region, because there's like a lot of cool stuff, like old churches that are centuries old, wooden ones, and other pretty cool stuff. And even if that will work, then we can spread out to other parts of Ukraine, or even other countries if it will work. And from here we go to the why we are doing this project. And actually there's three main reasons, and the last one will be the most important one, so we'll get back to it. But the first and foremost is the most obvious one, the preservation of cultural heritage. And this is actually really important, because nowadays there is some problems in general with any cultural objects, because obviously time passes, and our history and the world history in general is getting erased, is getting decayed. The wood falls apart, the stones fall apart. So it's really important right now to do something and preserve this, at least in a virtual space. Is yeah, obviously there is like some things you can specialists can do in real life, so they keep an eye on these objects and they clean them and make them inaccessible or something like that. But no, we're talking about more not only preserving it but making it as well well known and popular. So we're talking about the the virtual preservation of cultural heritage, and especially that this object not only fall apart due to natural causes, but as well man-made ones. So just have to keep an eye on that and protect our heritage in general. The next important thing is actually tied to the first one, which is popularization, because the more people know about this stuff, the more they care about it, the more things can be done to support it. And this actually was one of the main reasons why we started this project, because back in days, I remember these castles from my childhood, and I really, really liked them. And on my eyes, they were like slowly decaying and falling apart, and I was always worried about it. So I thought, okay, well, there is always stuff you can do and take some matters in your own hands. So that's what we're trying to do, to popularize this stuff and make people know about them. Not only the locals, but people from outside as well. And the last part, which is the most I think the most cool one, is education. Because as we were saying, nowadays photogrammetry scanning is really, really cool, and it definitely makes some magic. But you can go even further. What if you not only scan it and place in virtual environment? What if you recreate it? Because then you can, like with the help of some Houdini magic and in general algorithm, you can actually do the whole like history lessons and show children how stuff was built, how it was destroyed, and do some cool tricks with all like the physics and stuff, especially real time, the Unreal Engine, that it does miracles with lighting and simulations and stuff. So it's I think it's a huge underrated so far theme of educational content out there that you can just do and throw it out there so people know about this stuff. And you can do some history lessons and talk some about influential people around there and history of the castles, why they got decayed, what happened to them, and like do like the basically step by step through the centuries and how things ended the way they are. So I think this is really important and really cool to blend this whole thing of gaming and virtual spaces and culture and education. So we're talking about educational content in here.
Yeah,
And
I think
I
that
think it will be educational. Yeah, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna jump in. I said Unreal 5, like the anti-anomaly technology, it really is a game changer because it makes some of the virtual environment feel so immersive, and at a glance, sometimes almost feel like a real environment. So in terms of letting people experience something that's maybe not there before, or something that they just cannot experience in person, it goes beyond creating a game-like world like before. Now it's quite much more like a real world than just game environment.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like to some extent our whole talk will be more or less about education in terms of Houdini as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a very valid point. What you just said remind me of when I many years ago when I was back in Beijing, and there was this garden that was built by actually different architects from different cultures, and they put together this garden, and it was due to like historical events, it's not there anymore. I remember when I was just walking down, and there's some foundations of the building still there, and the wooden structure on top is just completely gone. It's just really sad. So if you got an opportunity to preserve it, it's good stuff.
Yeah, indeed.
Absolutely.
Like all old stuff is so interesting and so inspirational to be there. It's like, oh, how it was. And usually you kind of romanticize it a bit by, well, why not? It's like you don't have to be like precise. So yeah, something like that. So this is why we are doing this. And let's talk about like a bit back and how did the project started itself? Because yeah, it's cool to know why we're doing it, but how we started doing it, how we started thinking about it. And this was going to be a small trip back in days in 2019. I was still doing my master project in Denmark, where I was like studying game design because I really wanted to do like go like on a proper education and see what it can get me. And as my final theme, I decided, okay, well, I want to try to create something new. And at that point, I was still learning Unreal to some extent, but I was pretty impressed by it, and I was like, okay, well, I can do some stuff. Okay, let's try it. And I set myself a goal. Like I have to create everything on my own from the scratch. And as a theme, I thought, okay, well, I wasn't precisely sure that I want to do something unrealistic. Try to imagine the world, whatever world, from the scratch. I thought, okay, I wanted to be a bit more grounded. And when I was thinking about it, I realized that I love I really love this castle. This is one of the most cool like places around here, and it's like really, really like dramatic and inspirational. And you feel something when you're sitting there and like, okay, what if I try to recreate it? And actually, it is destroyed now to some extent. And I took the task upon myself, like artistic freedom to recreate it to some extent. So a lot of my part of my education, at least of this project, was to try to research on in general how castles work and how they could be built and recreate it in real. And I'm not going to stop a lot about it, but basically after I did it, I decided that I want to came back and actually I'll play some video in here in a minute while and see some of the videos from. So I came back and surprised people were really interested in this, and they started about it and invited me to like different shows and on TV and exhibitions. So I figured out, okay, people really do care about our hair, so why not to try to work with it? I talked to my family. I did, okay, we can try to adopt this as one of the projects in the gallery and see it work, because like doing it like in a group of people and with some like even it is all anyways better than doing it on your own. Is it gives way more resources and stuff. So yeah, we kind of thought, okay, this is cool, and we can try to do something and increase the scope to other castles and improve on it. So this is a pretty old project, but it gave some base and understanding on where we can move. Just gonna skip around it a bit. Like the video is running a bit slow, but hopefully it will get better. Maybe. Anyways, if you're for some reason curious about this particular castle, it is in my portfolio. So yeah, feel free to go there and see. There is more videos and comparison like of old castle and recreated one. I think I'm not gonna stop for a long while on this particular project and just try like jump straight on what we're doing right now. And I wanted actually this talk to be pretty honest and open about the project. Is at the same time, yeah, show that we're just the humans doing stuff and we make a lot of mistakes. So this is going to be a funny slide on how the processes are working right now. It's basically a roller coaster. So you started really enthusiastic, and then you do some like experiments and testing, and then there is a pitfall, and then you're frustrated, and then you drop the project. And then you find the possible solution and you think it might work. So you work for it for a bit and you know that it doesn't work. So you get frustrated again, and then you procrastinate, and then you have one more inspiration. And it was always like that. And actually, I'm gonna describe it a bit later why it was like that. And most of it was really deep and technical difficulties, because like the tech is pretty advanced. So, and finding something was a complicated task. So yeah, it was roller coaster, and it still is a roller coaster. So yeah, I'll go back in time a bit again and give the rough estimate on how we started. And basically, as I said, we decided to adopt this project as a gallery, and we started discussing it in early 2020, somewhere in the winter. And we were thinking of, okay, what can be done and how it can be done, because the first castle, it was done purely with photogrammetry, with the pretty bad cameras and whatever drone I could find and hire, and like whatever software I could use at that time. And the time limits were really, really limited. So I had to do the whole project in 4 months, and it meant like doing all the models, all the layouts, all textures, lighting, everything. So yeah, it was a big task. So I had to cut off somewhere, and it was like a test to some extent. And we really wanted to give it really, really extra quality this time, because we are the gallery after all. So we have to set the benchmark of how art works and how art looks. And we wanted to be this not only the preservation project, but as well the artistic project on how modern art could look like. So we really, really wanted to go for the quality in here, and we started talking about, okay, what the technology can be used. And as I said, quality is the key. So we wanted to really go for this artistic vision and really make it the best way possible. Because if some of you are from concept art background, as kind of I am, all the cool artists will tell you that your work is only as good as your references are. So knowing this, we realized, okay, we really need to have a really good raw material to work with. So the scan has to be really good. The photos have to be really good. And if you have that good, then everything will be built on top of that, and the quality will be something amazing. So we are really trying. by how many times I'm saying amazing and the quality, you kind of can get that I'm a bit perfectionist. Hopefully it won't kill me. So yeah. So and now we get to some insane technology, and we are talking about laser scanning. Yeah, this is absolutely insane field, and it's a whole world on its own. It's kind of closed, and it's really hard to get in because the community is really small and really specific, and most of it is tied to uh, measuring the construction, uh, ongoing constructions and stuff. And they kind of advertise a bit about the heritage, but most of the aim is construction companies, and they don't really share knowledge a lot. And the most interesting and important things and ideas you find and how to work with it are usually coming from some post somewhere out there on the forum that is like 10 years old and posted by the guy somewhere like in the middle of nowhere, really. And it's like behind 10 doors, and these 10 doors exist not because someone tries to hide it, but because just no one knows about it. So it's really hard to get some information about it, and usually the documentation is kind of vague. So if you really want to know the technology, it takes a while to learn it. So we realized that we want really to go for this because the quality of laser scanning is just insane. It's uncomparable to photogrammetry. Because in the beginning, I was skeptical because this thing costs a lot of money, and we as a private organization, we really try to be as cost effective as we can, because it is important. So we thought, okay, like if we can go for this, and if it makes sense, and like after some discussion we realized, okay, this is the way to go, clearly, because the comparison is just like, it's not there. So it's insane. So we got it in somewhere like early spring in 2020, and only a few months went to learn this stuff, to learn how to use it. So
Yeah, I remember you got so deep into it.
can
You're like an expert on this by now.
Yeah. Like after so much time spent on it, it's definitely. I'm pretty sure I can remember all the posts on the forums I read, and I've talked to so many people and so many companies. Because there is a really limited number of them. And some of you might ask, okay, why just we not don't outsource this stuff? Why just not ask, like, pay someone to do the scanning, and we just work with the final product? And there is like a number of reasons we didn't do it, actually. And first of all, we really wanted to some extent keep technology in house, so we know what we are working with, and we know, like, from the beginning till the end, we can do it, we can replicate it. Second is it's really a bit hard to judge on how good the scan is, because I mean, a lot of companies, yes, they will give you a lot of, like, tons of spreadsheets with like alignment reports and scanning reports, but usually it's like, I can be a bit biased, but it doesn't mean that what it says on report is actual reality. So it's a bit hard to judge how exactly the stuff was done. And third of all, the third reason is, I think might be again the most important one, is we really wanted to have the artistic control about it. We really wanted to go with, like, we know the quality of it, we know how many scans we got, we know that we're going for this, and we're gonna have like this many points and this resolution, and like we're not gonna cut corners here and there. So we really wanted to have control, because once again, we're striving for the top quality here. So yeah, so we started, and this is just like a screenshot of the castle that you saw in the intro. This is one of the scans, and it actually, the software does magic. I'll just will be a short demo on how the stuff looks like. This is one of the scans, and you can imagine how it is when it is combined. But the amount of points in here is pretty insane, and the quality of points and how they're spread, like, it's, if you see on the walls in here, it's basically kind of uncomparable to photogrammetry. So the quality jump from photogrammetry to laser scanning is really good. I'll talk about it later, but like the best of the two worlds, when you combine it, you get something amazing. We'll see it a bit later. So yeah, basically your scene consists of number of these scans, and you actually have to think on how you place them and what angles you place them at, and you have to decide on how exactly you do the scanning. So it's like a separate topic on its own, and how to do it properly in the field and how to process it. We'll probably get back to it in a bit. But yeah, this is how laser scans look like. Well, this on this example, one of them. So let's get back to our presentation. So yeah, we're working with this stuff, and actually there is a number of lessons. And the fun part is that's the roller coaster I'm talking about. There is the lessons learned. I think this ahead will be, you will hear a few times today, because every time you think the lessons are learned, they are not. There's still so many out there, and you're gonna do so many things wrong in here. I think Mike can remember, because we were like talking all the time during the course of these events. I was always like upset, and then like depressed, and then like, oh yeah, everything's working. Okay, no, it doesn't work. So it was always like that. Basically, okay, so let's go with the first one. It is now a one button click as advertised, which is a weird thing. Like a lot of companies are talking about now and trying to make it really user friendly. So like, okay, you can put it here, you press one button, it works. No, it does not. I mean, it will do something, but you're not really sure what it will do and what you can do with the information you got. Okay, and second, because after all, we're going for the culture, so we are doing like the color is really important for us, and it was one of the actually the things we were picking the scanner for and selecting the proper one, if it can do color or cannot do color. And that's why we went for the one that does color. And we thought, okay, cool, yay, we have the scanner, we have amazing quality, amazing points, and they're even colored, yay. Well, not at all. I mean, they are colored, but as you can remember, these things are really tailored for construction workers and measuring construction sites. So they really need to color for purely representation purpose. So you can say, okay, this pipe is red, this one is blue. Okay, they probably don't go together. That's about it. From my experience, I mean, maybe something changed, and maybe they did some cool tech, because I know some of them started making separate cameras that you put on top of your laser scanner, and they will blend it somehow together. But from what I know, like usually the color is not that good, at least for our needs. So we really needed to be on another level, and it was good to see the color, but it wasn't still not enough for the gallery stuff. So okay, so we know this is one of the things it doesn't do, so we need to see something about it. The third part is registering scans. It's absolutely different topic. By registering, I mean when you took some number of scans, and there is like, well, some of them scattered around. Somehow you need to combine them all together. Like if you're familiar with photogrammetry, usually it just picks random points in the photos, and then it like tries to nail it down and place it one to another, so it makes a geometry. Laser scanning does something similar, so it kind of picks randomly. It depends on the algorithm though, but it kind of picks points on your scans and try to realign these two scans so they fit to one another. And actually, that's a separate topic, and all the software kind of revolves around it. And we probably talk about the software, but trust me, it took months to figure it out. To do it like properly. And yeah, every scanner company has its own software solution, but it doesn't mean it's like doing the best job. And a lot of the time, because that especially lately, they're trying to go for this like easy solution package where you like press one button on the scanner, and then you press one button in the software, it gives you some results, but you have absolutely no control of what it does, and you usually don't even know what it's doing, and you have no one to ask. And like that, not always the companies even reply to you, so it's a bit hard to justify the quality of your register. And then you know about all of like external targets that you have to place, and like points that have to be there, and like really specific stuff. So like, and at the point where we're getting this scanner, we didn't know a thing about registration. We just thought it like does it automatically on itself. So you like do one scan by another, and it just like puts it all together. Okay, cool. No, unfortunately, it's not like that. And as we already said, the scanners and software are really tailored towards the construction sites, which means they kind of prioritize man-made environments. So a lot of them do a really good job when it's like a lot of walls and pipes and like metal structures. So it's easy to blend it, because there is like literally a surface, and you kind of mesh surfaces. But when it's something a bit more uniform, that's where things get a bit more complicated. And as you can guess, the castles are like probably one of the worst case scenarios for them.
It's going to be a running theme throughout this presentation about them.
Yeah, it probably is.
Yeah.
yeah, it's actually one of the reasons why we're like doing all the cleaning in Houdini, but you will hear about it later. I don't want to do any spoilers here. So yeah, and since we already talked about the color and we realized it was not enough for our needs, that we realized, okay, that means that we have to go for the photogrammetry. And what does it mean for us? Well, I think most of you are like you know what photogrammetry is, and this is like the image from the reality capture, one of the reality capture videos. But basically it's like when you took number of photos and then with the some cool advanced mathematics and triangulation, you made the surface out of it and you colorize it. And we realized, okay, if scanner is doing geometry for us, which is actually as well limited, because as probably some of you know, but or can guess from common sense, the scanner is standing in one point and it's just like shooting laser beams all around. And if it sees the point there, it gives back the result, so you know the point is there. Which means that everything that's not in direct line sight of the scanner is well, it's occluded, so it's just not there. So if you want to scan something properly, you have to scan it from all sides, like in photogrammetry. But like in photogrammetry, it's like obvious process that you just go around and take enormous amount of photos. In laser scanning, you can't really do it that easily because scanners take a while. Like each scan takes a while to do, and like you can't really do a lot of them because the more there are, the a bit more problematic it is to merge them, and the more errors there are. So yeah, there are some limitations to that. So we realized, okay, we're gonna use the scanner for the main areas and like the more or less like precise geometry and the main parts of it. And then where we don't see some points, we're just gonna like keep it busy with some photogrammetry, and then we're gonna just from this like photogrammetrical photos, we're just gonna lay the amazing textures on top, and boom, we have it. Amazing points from laser scanning and amazing color from photogrammetry. Yeah, and it sounds really cool. But what it meant for us is we now we had to now our budget is crying even more because we have to spend the separate like money on cameras and drones and lighting, etc., to make it like stand the quality of our laser scanning. So it's another separate thing that we had. And one of the problems was back in days is like we're gonna get back to this. Like, there's problem on the problem, as you can see, with the software once again, because there was not enough solutions that were capable of merging laser scanning and photogrammetry. And there are still not that many. And while some of them do pretty good job, they're still treating laser scans as a cameras, while they are not really. And this implies some limitations. We'll talk about it right now. This is like one more small problem. And it's literally a small problem. It means like the occluded points that we said, there are, as you can see, if there is a scanner in here, it only sees what's in the direct vision. So if it was like a back wall of it, it just doesn't see it. Okay, if you have a big subject, okay, that works. You just go around and place one more scan. What if it's something small? What if it's like some tiny things that are close to one another and you just can't physically put the scanner so it will shoot between, like, for example, my head and here? And you know that when you will make the cloud out of it, especially when you make it geometry out of it, it will just like make a blob, make a mess. And if you're going for the quality, it's well, it's not ideal. So how do you go around it? And actually, that was still year 2020, and we found a solution to that one as well after some trials. Handheld laser scanners. This is a cool thing that you basically, it's a laser scanner, but you like carry it around, and it's supposed to give you color as well, or at least some of them do. And once again, it's still tailored for the construction work, so it's still limited color. You have to know it. But yeah, it can give you this extra scanning steps where you can't really reach, or there is a lot of like tiny parts or small parts, and it wouldn't make much sense to go with a big scanner and place it. Just go with a small one, and in a matter of minutes, you just scan it. And everything sounds really cool, and we're like, okay, yeah, this will work. And actually, one of the scanners we have, it came out in 2020, and I just saw that one twice and went, okay, this is gonna fix our issues. This thing will work like a charm, I'm sure. Well, little I know, more problems with handheld scanners now, because as we said, now we have to find the solution that can combine laser scanner, handheld scanner, and photogrammetry. And you can guess there is not a single solution out there. And one of the problems lies within that all the solutions of softwares that do the blend of laser scanner and photos, they actually treat laser scans as a cameras, just like a standard cameras that sit in one spot and just given. So they kind of I'm not sure how it exactly works in different softwares, but I assume it just skips the part of finding these points on the photographs and just says, okay, these are the points, and it places them in there. And the problem with that, okay, the terrestrial scanner, it has this stationary thing that it wasn't moved, so the camera is there. What about the handheld scan? Because you move the thing around constantly, so it's like literally there are like different variations of how they work. Some of them work with the projector or structured light. Some of them work with just something similar to photogrammetry. But anyways, they work the way that you move the thing around, like in photogrammetry. So there is not a single point. And yeah, it gives away the cloud, and cloud is pretty cool. But the cloud doesn't have this single point of where you can see everything. So you can't really freely just praise it because the software won't read it. And it's not a problem if you put two of these things together. Okay, if you put LiDAR and handheld, okay, that works because like the software companies that work for laser scanning, they can, well, some of them can blend those two together. And blend in LiDAR and photos, no problem. Blend in handheld and photos, no problem as well, because then you just have this cloud and you mesh the cloud, and now you have like photogrammetry cloud, which is a bit more vague, but it has nice color. And then you have amazing cloud from handheld scanner, and you just like replace one with another, and you bake the textures to the good geometry, and it works. Yeah, but it works if you don't have to do anything extra on top of that. So it's and you can't, at this point, you can't really blend the points from the photos, the photogrammetry, and the points from the handheld, because you just simply replace the photogrammetry with the handheld scanner. So, and this is still a major issue that haven't been resolved, and I hope will do. And I have to point that the best software that does it so far is Reality Capture, which is the Epic family. So it's doing really good job, but they still have some areas where to improve, especially with like support and LiDAR and handheld, but it's already amazing. So hands down, this is the best thing you can go so far. I will talk about it. There's no single solution, so it's not like you can use only one reality capture and it will work. No, there is like a number of softwares you still have to use in order to get it. But at least in terms of merging this stuff, reality capture does it pretty nicely. Though the handheld support is still just not there because it's like the process of stuff. So there is like one workaround that you can try to cut handheld in half in some parts and place them, but it doesn't see the normals, so it can't treat what it's seen, what's it not, and still one more issue. So yeah, as we said, there is no single solution, and all of them lack some features, so you have to combine. So you have to do registration in one software and do this thing in this software, and then you have to put it all together, okay, in reality capture, and from there you go somewhere else. So there's a still number, which is a problem if you're a small company, because then you know that you have to support the whole like array of softwares, and you like have to pay for them. And usually everything that's have like laser in it is getting really pricey. So there's a bit of problem there. And if you're really trying to find a cost-effective solution, it's a bit more complicated. And some of the softwares are insanely technical. They were done by software engineers. They have no idea what UI is. So it's insanely hard to use it. If you think in Houdini UI is complicated, it's hard to work there. Oh my God, you haven't seen those things. That is a mess. Yeah, but basically, reality capture is magic, and pretty sure like a lot of you know it, and especially since they were bought by Epic Games, and it's like one package now. It's insane. And one more reason why we went for reality capture back in days as well, because right at the point where we were trying to realize how do we blend this stuff together, there were a few solutions, and I think somewhere around there it was 2020 or 2029, somewhere there, reality capture was changed their subscription system. So now it's they have an option to pay per input, which is perfect for a small business like ours, because we're not doing any construction work, so we can't really earn money from going all there and like, I don't know, scanning some factories, something like that. We are really working on the cultural stuff, so it's pretty hard to like get a lot of money from that, and a lot of projects as well, because every project takes a long while, and especially we're not like trying to really do only the laser scanning. We are mostly making stress on taking this bigger, making environment out of it, use engine and make games and videos and content and educational stuff. So it's only like part of the process, and we realize, okay, we can't really afford paying a lot of money for the software because it's just pricey for our needs. And that's where Reality Capture came in and like, okay, guys, we have pay per input. Now you only pay for the stuff you use, and like this is perfect. You can do a lot of tests, and then you like only export when you can. So yeah, this is amazing. So yeah, as we said, there's in 2021 we didn't have the proper pipeline, and we still we have it roughly now, but it's a separate topic. But yeah, back in 2021 we didn't have it, but despite that we still went in the field and we went to all the castles that we wanted, and we scanned them and took the photos. And the reason for that is there was a number of fortunate conditions, and the good conditions for scanning are these three. And I'm not saying we had all of them, but usually the first one is you really need to have the proper knowledge of hardware and capturing process, because this is really, really, really important on how you put your scans and how many of them and what distance between them and what objects you're scanning and how you doing, how you approaching, and are you doing any targets artificial. And all of this is a separate topic on its own, and that's why so many when it's not done by a single person, it's always a group of professionals that are out there. And my brother helped a lot, so we went 2 and 2. Two of us were not enough. Sometimes there was 3 or 4 of us, my dad and other people help. It's you have limited amount of time, and you have to drag all the stuff all around and capture it there and do drone and blah blah blah, so everything at the same time. So yeah, it's complicated in the field, and then you really have to have a good weather and lighting conditions. By weather, I mean you can't really do it in snow or in rain, and it's obvious reasons, because you can't fly in a drone in rain because it's gonna die, and you can't really do it with laser scanning as well. I mean, usually those devices are waterproof, but still, the big issue is that the water drops they land on the mirror of the laser, and it can basically make the lasers and make the points corrupted, which will influence in the bad data. And the same comes for fog and the strong lighting conditions from the sun, because then the sun interferes with the laser and it's still can be the wrong data. So you really need to, and especially, okay, we're talking laser, what about photogrammetry? And photogrammetry is even more the ideal situation is a foggy day without rain. So you have to have that weather. And at that moment we kind of had it, so we could do laser scanning and photogrammetry at the same time, and it somehow worked. And the last one, but not the least, is good accessibility, because you have to be physically able to walk there around, fly around, to capture all the angles. And in our case, because we're working with the old castles, and to say that a lot of them are kind of neglected and overgrown. And that particular summer we were lucky, because there was huge group of volunteers that were going from one castle to another, cleaning them one by one, and we were basically following their steps and just scanning the week after they left. So we had almost I can't say perfect, because they were still doing it to some extent for the viewer, which means that some areas they were still inaccessible, but it's the best that we could get without trying to clean everything on our own. So yeah, those are the good conditions that you have to have. So, and with the good accessibility, we were really lucky. So we realized, okay, we have to go now. And though we are not completely sure about the process and how we are doing it, we still have to do it now, because later it's just going to be possible. Which was actually the truth, because I was to 2 of those castles lately, and they are kind of overgrown now. So it's a bit hard to scan them, and you will lose a lot of points, especially closer to the ground. So yeah. Now we move to processing, and we're getting closer and closer to Mai taking his voice to us. Yeah. So yeah, we started processing. It was late summer 2021, because somewhere in the summer there was a lot of foggy and overcast, foggy overcast weather, and they were clean. So we took data and realized, okay, now we have it. At least I choose the one that I can work with, and I feel like the data is the best. So we went for this one, is Serednia Castle. So after a lot of time, because I had to try a lot of software packages, and once again, my whole journey with laser scanners was switching one to another and see what works the best, and it's still it's still an open question. And at that point, nailing the proper registration, because it's always the problem if they register, especially closing the loop, because you start with the laser scan and you go all around through the castle, for example. And what happens when the last scan losses on the first one, and how do they merge? And usually there's an error that builds up, and sometimes they just don't align. And a lot of software, they say, okay, we do the corrections, but how do they do the corrections? I mean, are they running the corrections on pair of scans, or are they doing like the bundle adjustment on all of them together? And you never know. And almost every software is pretty close about what exactly they're doing, and they're not saying how it's done. So you can only guess and do some tests, which is usually not enough. But there are some smaller ones that you can contact, and they will be really open about it. I usually find the smaller companies be so nice and so helpful and trying to do stuff. So yeah, it was not refined. It took a while to do like a good registration, but eventually we ended up somehow magically blending the laser scan, the handheld scan, and the photo scan. And the handheld was a separate beast because we ended up having some problems with our device. So the points were a bit noisy, so we had to figure out how to take away the noise without losing the quality and number of points. But yeah, we ended up having a pretty promising cloud, and I still think it can be better, but as we all know, I'm perfectionist, so it always can be better. But the result was pretty good. And we said, okay, this is pretty cool, and now we can do something with it, or we can already do some videos with it. And I have to separately mention, I'm not sure if you see in the bottom part in here the text, but basically Unreal Engine has the amazing plugin which is called LIDAR or LiDAR. I'm not sure how people pronounce it properly, but LiDAR point cloud. Oh yeah, LiDAR point cloud support, and you can literally like export the point cloud and put it in Unreal and put the lighting in there, and even I think it can be even use the collisions, so you can walk in the thing and just look at the points, which is really cool. Especially if that's what you're going for, you can do it directly in Epic, so you don't even need to do it in this kind of. Like, you can do a lot of it with the cloud as well. But here comes the next problem. That you have a nice cloud, but then if you're doing the game out of it or doing environment, it has to be the geometry, right? So how do you make the geometry out of it? Because usually these clouds, they are insanely big. This castle, I didn't go for. I did a lot of tests. I spent like 2 weeks trying to do like different bakes and see what settings work the best. Because like, though the documentation is pretty cool in reality capture, they still some things are not clear enough, so you have to do the test on your own. But I think you usually have to do it all anyways to find the best settings. And the original castle, I think, was around 600 million points or something like that. So you definitely can make the geo out of it, which is like burn your PC and the house with it. So so you have to know how to make a geo out of it, and you know that you have to simplify. But how exactly does the software simplifies it, or what points it just discards and what it keeps? And this is only one problem. The bigger problem, though, is that while you see in the cloud looks like, look at this, it looks pretty cool, but you don't see the stuff that's wrong because you don't see the geometry, you don't see the normals, and you just see only the points. And if there's more points, they just like block the view, and you think, oh, this is so cool. There is a lot of problems in there. Like, the big one is vegetation, and this is so big because usually for the construction needs and people that are doing laser scanning regularly, they just they either don't have any filters inside of the software, so you can't really clean everything, or they have really strong filters, so it will almost entirely cut away all the vegetation, only leaves everything. And with that, it will cut away small details, but they don't care about it because it's not their scope of the stuff. So yeah, it's the problem with this cleaning, even at the laser scanning stage. And now you have the cloud, and you still have this vegetation left, and it's somewhere, especially in the castle, it can be between the rocks, and can be some leaves and branches sticking out, and you somehow to clean that up. And it's like, it's painful to do that. And as well, there are some occluded areas that were just like not there, or there's something else in there, some unwanted objects, some pipes sticking, or people throwing I don't know, trash and bottles around the castle, and you just didn't have time to clean it up on yourself. Now I know it will be way easier to just go around and pick up all the trash, because back in the days I was like, yeah, that's not a problem, we're just gonna clean it later. It's always the problem. Don't do that. It's a big mistake. Yeah, and noise and all this stuff. Yeah, so it's like, you know that this is gonna be a problem. How do we convert it into the geometry? And yeah, reality capture video here. I'm just gonna put the video, this big one, but here you can see So this is some of the cameras, and like a lot of them were being taken away just so representation purpose. So there's a lot of stuff, but you can see the points there, and I will be switching to in this video to geometry and then to texture geometry. Yeah, but basically all of this is like it's inside reality capture, and it really looks good. And it's even better when you put in an engine. But as you can see, for example, in here where there's like some branches on top of the castle and some areas like that, that's the thing you want to like cut away. You don't want them in there. And this is like the most visible ones, but they're all around the castle. And some areas were completely overgrown, and you can't really just turn it away. It's like if you try to, sometimes can happen because this is an old structure. So if you see like a branch, you try just I don't know, take it away. You can some accident drag away some of the rocks, and like the whole thing will fall down. So it's a bad idea to do that. And back in the day, I thought, okay, well, we can't really take it away. What we can do, okay, we can maybe I don't know, cut it in post production. Well, it was a bad decision because it adds post processing, and post processing is, I feel like at this point, is a bit more complicated than do it on the side. So yeah, I would, if I had to do it, I would just like took the scissors and just go around and just cut away the stuff. Yeah, but it was still an issue, and some of the areas that were so overgrown that you had problems with it. So yeah, it's the question how you do it, and there's actually let's skip a bit. It will load the texture geometry, and especially on this kind of screen, it looks amazing. But you have to remember that this thing is huge. Like if you're standing, you'll be maybe tall at this rock, so you can almost without crouching, you can fit in this hole. Like these walls in here are like 1.5, sometimes 2 meters thick. This is a huge thing. If you look at it as a toy castle, it looks good, but like we really needed to make sure that when you go close to it, it still keeps the detail, and that's why the filters have to be clever. That's how this decimation has to be clever. Everything has to be like pretty clever, so you have this like fidelity, and you can keep it in real time. So yeah, I'm getting close to the end here. So we realized that yeah, though you can do some processing in reality capture, you usually have to work on the on the cloud itself, and then like redo the geometry process. So if you already had a nice geo and you want to make something that's a bit more complicated to cut away something, and then you have to close holes, and there's always a problem, especially with the huge geometry, closing holes. And then okay, but if you close the hole and there was like imagine there's been a wall going, and there was like a small area where like there was something included in it, and you just cut away the hole, and it will fill it with like straight, like I don't know, some polygons that will be flat. You will see the spot straight away that it's flat. So we need to find the way to make it follow the geometry that we already have. And so for those number of reasons, I realized, okay, we need one more software after reality capture to make a perfect model out of it. I'm not talking about a good model, a perfect model. And first of all, we really need, this software has to be able to work with the huge geometry, because yeah, of course you simplify it, and from 600 million points you go to something lower. You go to like, I think the reality capture can display at once 40 million triangles. So usually you decimate it to 40 million because at least you can see it at the same time on the screen like that. And usually, okay, you work with those 40 millions, and then you need to take it somewhere and simplify it there. And the reason for that is there's, like, I would say 3 main reasons. Well, first of all, once again, we're striving for the quality. Second is, if you try to decimate it and clean the small model, the decimated model, and then bake from high poly to low poly, you have some issues on the normals and all the stuff. And we see that even this whole like low poly to high poly processes get a bit more, well, outdated and changes. And especially with Nanite. Nanite just like really changed the rules of the game. So now you're able to display like insane meshes. Like you can manage to throw some big stuff in there. I was trying things on different machines, and actually in the demo video, the castle you see, that's 20 million triangles, and it's running on 1080 card, and it's not a problem. And yeah, so you can process that. But one thing that the engine can process it, and reality capture can process it, and another thing is like you have to somehow work with it. Is you have to somehow clean it. So the software you do it in has to be like capable of running the thing. And second, like I straight away realized that procedural, at least semi-procedural approach is the only way to go. And Mai will be talking about it a lot because Houdini is all about proceduralism. But yeah, that saves a lot, especially if there's only few of you. You have to save time and resources wherever you can. So you're trying to set up the clever pipelines instead of manually trying to go in and clean everything. The next thing the software need to be is it has to be pretty I would not say technical, but you have to have the control on how exactly the decimation happens, how exactly the unwrap happens, because you can't really rely on, and a lot of in previous softwares you really rely on stuff. Okay, you just hit unwrap and it does something. Well, that's not good enough. And the same goes for decimation. You just hit decimate button, it just does something. You have no idea what it does, and you have maybe like 2 sliders to control it, and you really want to have better control of that. And ideally, it will be all-in-one software solution, so you don't have to make, I don't know, 5 softwares after reality capture, because it's gonna be like a huge, I don't know, chunk of like stuff you need to have to do something. And well, there is none available at the market at that point. And I tried a lot of different softwares, and a lot of them already had issues just with working with large geometry, not even talking about other stuff. And that's one of the roller coaster thing. I got depressed once again. I'm like, okay, I have no idea how to fix this. So I got frustrated, but suddenly I saw a ray of bright light, and actually it was Mai, because somewhere around there he was already at Houdini, and I was like sitting one day, we were discussing this stuff, and I'm like, okay, wait a second, proceduralism, huge geometry, that's something in there. I'm like, okay, is it possible? But come on, it's a small thing. If we can do it in a week, check it. We were talking about it. I think it was fall 2021, like late fall 2021. So, well, now we have it. But yeah, I think that's roughly it for me. Thanks. I hope it wasn't really boring because they get a bit more technical. But
Well, that was amazing.
It's really interesting. Some of it I haven't heard about it before either. No, it's very interesting to see the inside of it. Which is not to say my part's not going to be technical too. Sorry, there's a delay. If I'm talking over each other, there's a 5 seconds of delay or something.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I loved it. Yeah. Lead us on, Mai. What's next?
Okay. So Ivan provided you guys with some context of how we started to, naturally progress through this long and convoluted path of finding all the solutions along the way. As you can see, it's an extremely long pipeline, and you get to this spot where it's almost 1 or 2 steps before we can get this thing into Unreal Engine and have all the nice rendering and everything when we start to build a game. At least that's our hope, that it could have happened much sooner. But as it was the theme that he mentioned in the beginning of his presentation, that it's extremely unpredictable. The do everything button doesn't technically exist, even though as my job at SideFX is we build tools, and you always think about, I just want to have a tool that just does this magical thing with a 1 button, but it's pretty much just a joke. Once we get to the bottom of things, and everything needs to be sometimes rethought out, which is why this project started as a free time, our own like kind of passion project. For me, it's more passion project. For him, it's more important. But then he got into very usable result, and because me at SideFX Labs, and we basically make tools that's available for the public, for developers, and a lot of them who works with Epic and work with Unreal Engine. So we wanted to just go with that spirit of and actually I asked for his permission, and he was very kindly, he and his family was very kind to let me make some of the tools that we made in the process available for other people to use too. So there's some of the things I'm going to be talking about today, and also because I'm a tech art nerd. So if you can bear with me, I'm going to dive into, when I talk about how some of the tools are made, I'm going to dive into a little bit of a tech art thing. Hopefully you find that interesting. All right, that's me rambling.
We'll find it magical, because Houdini is a huge magic.
No, everything's magic. Alright, so let's go back in time. This is like, I think, December last year. I got this file. It's 40 million triangles. So at the beginning, we actually started to think about what is the end product. This is not just like a one size fit all result. We wanted to have an asset that's runnable. Maybe one of the version, you want to correct me if I'm wrong, one of the version is supposed to be run in like an exhibition kind of setting, so you can have a beefy machine, you can power it, you can run high poly, doesn't matter. Then you wanted to be able to distribute it, especially when it comes to education and game content, you want it to be distributed. So it needs to be lighter, and we still need to prepare multiple versions of lower res one. And we thought about we're going to take advantage of nanites, and how much of nanite can we, how much can we realistically throw at nanite, because this is not like using instancing, because as instancing is super important to build a large instance, one monolithic structure, so you can't really like instance anything. So it's not like we can just throw infinite amount of stuff to nanite. So it means the process involves cleaning this up, get rid of the undesirable stuff, like all these weird little tails or devil's horns on the torso. This one part of it. Oh, that they are playing the bar. That's not even the worst part. I'll show you the worst part. I'm holding back on the worst part. Then
that's
then there's the UV. It's an ongoing process. So still at the project's ongoing process, I'm going to show you what has been done so far and what tools have been developed so far, which ones are available. Yeah. So this is the beginning. Then when you get a thing like this, so you pan around, look at it for 15 minutes before you decide to do anything. Just appreciate how good it looks. It's all color. This is not texture applied, so this is all the points. I hope you can see the resolution. Hope the video resolution is clear enough. You can see all the points and edges. It's very, very tiny. And it's not regular at all. It's the only regular, it's these kind of corner faces. It's my favorite part of the class, and the rest of it is just completely organic. Actually, a little bit fun stories back in the day. We talked about building like a stone brick generator. I made a prototype of stone bricks, but it's very much like regular shaped bricks, nothing like this. But if you wanted to, like in a procedure where build something like this, it will be a much tougher problem to solve, to have this kind of thing. So
future project, room to improve.
I know. We talked about it. The second version of this is just a completely rebuilt one, not a scanned one.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, so the first step that we tried many things. You can see it's a giant network, and this whole chunk over here is just discarded because that's some experiment we did and didn't work out. I just saved it there for reference purposes. Okay. This is a lab tool. Calculate thickness. My friend Paul Ambrosius, he made it before he left the company. So I can show you what it does. Some of this will be slightly slower because we're working with a huge geometry. Now you can see this is a visualization of the data that's calculated on this node. Essentially, the job we're trying to do is to identify smaller things like this grass over here, and try to do an automated process. This has been so long ago. You were saying the idea of this needs to be procedural, but it wasn't completely obvious from the beginning, and like to what extent it needs to be procedural. It wasn't too clear, and you were talking about like maybe going. I think that at the start we're like, yeah, Mai, just set up a few nodes and set up a simple file and send it to me, and I'll clean it up. But
something like okay.
Yeah, it ended up being
let's do
so
it in a
much
week
more
and simple. Yeah.
And it's been a year between other things. So yeah, so that's one way of identifying it. Then you can start to like process them. And I can give you like for context and give you like a quick before and after before I dive into everything else. So let's say this is the problematic areas. It's distributed everywhere. That there are some ones are easier to see and other ones are harder to spot, but they are like scattered around the surface, which is very nice because it presents a challenge that we have to find a solution for. One thing about developing software is that you don't have a singular use case, or your use case might not be as demanding as how demanding Ivan is, which is a blessing actually, because we can push the envelope and really try to make really good tools. And the other side is that when you provide services or tools for many different people to use, they will throw it at different scenarios, and you really want your tool to be high powered so that whatever scenario they try to throw into will be handled. So this is sort of like a removal process after it's deleted. This is just for context, and now we're going to go through some of the steps and lessons learned in that. One note about how to identify these areas. Well, a frequent tool people think about is measuring curvature. So curvature is sort of about the angle between vertices, and there is a difference between measuring curvature versus measuring thickness. It's basically, this thickness is much more resolution independent. So say if you have, I'm going to put on my beautiful image paint.
That's an amazing drawing. I already like it.
I request a framed copy of this when it's done.
Okay. So let's say the left version is a lower resolution geometry, and the right version is a higher resolution one. They have the same look if you just look at it without the vertices. But if you measure curvature on this one, it will yield a different result than these guys. Over here, this is like a high curvature point, but here it's not. It's flat. It's, as you can see, it's immediately resolution dependent. But if you measure thickness, what it does is actually kind of disregard the resolution in a way. It's still, the more points you have on the geometry, the calculation is better. But I basically try to do sort of like an ambient checking of how much stuff you can see in this drawing. And that's really not tied to any vertex count. So measured curvature has its uses. For the purpose of cleaning up geometry, we end up finding that this kind of volume-based thickness checking a better tool. Let me take this opportunity to jump into a tool. So how am I going to do this? Is I'm going to walk through this sort of our, the node chain is also the chronological chain of our pains and struggles, but somewhere along the way, some tools popped out. One of the new tools that we made.
We tried so many of them. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I think like every time new variation, new approach. And actually that's amazing thing about Houdini, because Houdini is perfect if you're good at building logical things and just common sense. Yeah. And we're talking about not being like wise, we're more talking about being smart, because you can just think on how things might work and might make sense to work, and then you just learn the tools of how to do it. So if you're pretty cool at that, then learning Houdini is not a big deal, because like it takes really applied like your thinking and your logics to some stuff, and that's where we'll sit in a lot and like trying to think, okay, how this can be done. And a lot of our work was just like we were sitting and dropping some cat ears like here trying to decide how stuff could work and what algorithm we could do.
Yeah, we had a blue jam board. We were just like jamming on that.
Yeah, that was fun actually.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh, first tool. I have a list of tools. Let's talk about the first one. It's inspired by the calculated thickness, but it has a bit more expanded usage. One of the things we noticed early on was when we were trying to calculate the concavity and convexity of certain geometry, usually there's a seed parameter like this. And the sampling of the, let me just erase this and explain a bit in a new graph. Let's say if you have a surface, if you have a surface here, and you're trying to check this surrounding, right? You're not gonna have infinite amount of points to check every ray. You're just gonna check a few directions. That's how much you can afford. It's well poor. Most of the time when we do this kind of sampling, it's a seeded result. So each direction is generated based on a random number. That's kind of okay. In certain situations, okay. In other situations, as I was saying, that the reason we created the new tool, which is called a physical ambient occlusion, is this kind of random results start to bug us. Like we're thinking, okay, you have a topographical feature of this object. Why does it keep giving me flickering results every time I try to generate like a clean mask? So, for instance, this is what it might look like. I don't know if the GIF plays well on the stream, but you can see it's flickering. And all that it does is we're changing the seed here. And if I'm trying to use this gradient to mask something, that means the result is just going to keep changing. But the plus side is that it kind of looks very artistic. It's almost like a painted effect or like a dirt buildup. So traditionally, when I say traditionally, it's not that long ago. It's for just a few versions of software ago. It's the same tool that does both jobs. The one that checks for the topology of something, and the one that adds dirt and grimes to crevices of geometry. But we realized that's sort of a different thing, because for dirt and grimes, you kind of want it to have an uneven look. You want this kind of look. But if you wanted to define a geometrical mask, or if you actually want to do proper ambient occlusion on geometry, you don't want the result to be kind of random. So our starting point was to change how we do the sampling. So let me just pop up the tool we have here. This is sort of result. Let me just try to set on dirt buildup mode, but let's just go to the default. Actually, let me just do a new one. Scroll. All right. Let me turn off some of color correction. E. All right. So this is roughly just, there are points on it, and the shading you see, it's not viewport shading, it's just calculated. So ambient occlusion, it's sort of like a physical property. It describes how much that area is occluded. We changed, for this tool, we changed the algorithm of how ambient occlusion is computed, and have a little graph here for a comparison of what's different. So this is the new one that we went with. Traditionally, the ambient occlusion on geometry level, it's done kind of like this, where you pick a few random directions and you shoot a ray and see within the distance that you're allowed to test, does the ray hit anything, and you count how many ray hits divided by the total number of ray you get, and that fraction is the ambient occlusion that's yielded. So one of the first things we adapted is to consider the distance of the hit from the hitting point. So like this area, it will provide a stronger occlusion than this one, because this one is more opened up. So the light can more easily get to this point. So the length of the head is a factor. The angle of the head is also a factor. So the weight is, as you can see here, it's a function of the mu here is the length, and the cosine of which represent the angle. The other interesting thing is if you think about this kind of shape. Let's say this valley is not too deep, and this is the inside, and that's outside. That's your sun. This spot actually will be
Nice
surprising me. What did you say?
Nice sun. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it when you said that you're not going to be really technical and then you showed us some math equations.
No, it could be interesting to some people. Anyway, this part will actually not be very black, because if you're thinking about it, there's a sky with the uniform lighting that represent the ambient occlusion. The sky can directly see the spot. So this kind of structure in the proper weighted ambient occlusion, in a physical ambient occlusion, means it's going to be moderately bright. Unlike that, this kind of structure will be dark because the light can't penetrate into it. So there's a difference between sort of the concavity. Concavity should be tested by more like a uniform test versus ambient occlusion, which simulates the kind of light transport in a way. That's one thing that we changed. The other thing we changed is the sampling direction. We wanted to get rid of the seed. So there are multiple modes for this node. So you can see the first one is physical ambient occlusion. Then you have valley and peaks and dot build up. So each mode should act accordingly based on how they should be used. So most of the other one, actually, dirt build up has a seed here, but these guys do not, because they're supposed to represent topology. What we used is this thing essentially. If you change it to polygon, this shape here, it's a type of planetonic solids called icosahedron. So they pretty much have an even divide between, if you draw a line from the center of the geometry to each point, the angle between each two vectors are the same, so they're evenly spaced out. And when you increase the resolution, they're still relatively evenly spaced out. There are different algorithms for generating this shape at a higher resolution, but they are much more even compared to a random sample. So we went with that, essentially. If you dive into this node, you will see, let's say, which set the sample frequency to something a bit higher, A, for instance. What happens inside is, I think I should have it here. Here we generate the geometry that represent all the angles that you do not sample. And when you reduce the amount of frequency you have on the UI level of the node, that means you don't get less points. And let's just play with that a little bit. So, but even at lower points, it's still a very nice distribution, and the distribution really matters here. So then what happens on a per node basis is that you can imagine there is a reference normal direction that goes from this point. If you can see my cursor, it goes from this point to this direction. Then on each point, we don't really want to, let's say, copy stamp this geometry onto every single point of my origin geometry. That'll be too much data because I have lots of points here already. So all I need to do is to compare the point normal on my origin geometry and see what's the difference between that point normal and this reference normal direction. Then I rotate that point normal to, rotate this axis to the point normal, which generates, you can generate different things. You can generate a rotation matrix, or you can generate a quaternion. In this case, we just use quaternion, much faster. So you use that quaternion, you apply the same quaternion to all the additional points, which will efficiently rotate them to the position they need to be. So let's visualize result. Let's bring this down a little bit and turn on visualize samples. I'm streaming at the same time, so probably a bit tasking on my system. Oh no. All right, let's try again.
We're asking a lot of it, that's for sure.
All right, there we go.
I bet you can feel it from the machine.
Yes. I just took the lid of my machine off. It's just too hot. It has no lid. Anyway, this stuff, for this stuff you see here on top. This is the if we try to like draw a line on the sample point of each one, you can see it's very uniformly distributed, and that's essentially what it does. It rotates that reference over here, so that guarantees you don't have to use a seed, and the result should be relatively consistent. And combined with the new weighting algorithm we were able to achieve some interesting result. And I hope it's not a big problem to compare. Like for us, we're like very supportive of different softwares when they do the job. So let's say Blender in this case. We use Blender as a benchmark because we can easily get like ambient occlusion. Which one is Blender? This one is Blender. Ambient occlusion render pass from the Blender test geometry, and this is what we have. Yeah, this is what you see on the right is rendered image, outputting only ambient occlusion, and on the left is not a rendered image. It's like a viewport look of just a highly divided geometry using the algorithm that we have, and pretty much it's 1-to-1. Here we really can't really find any noticeable difference between the two. So that gives us some confidence to say, yes, this new algorithm for ambient occlusion purposes works good. I think some of the next steps that we're going to do in terms of future work is so we're going to import this same technique into texture baking. We have ambient occlusion baking in texture, like our maps baker. So we could adopt the same technology. All right. Next thing related to this. Let's go back to the class a little bit before.
This is clearly magic here.
Oftentimes when we're talking, sorry.
I was just agreeing. This. You're a wizard right now. You're a wizard, Mike.
You felt me. So, all right. This is like a color visualization of some of the masks. Let's say like the theme park mask that we are calculating. I found often we have to just do this thing again and again. We generate a mask, then we need to take a normalized range of the thing, because when we generate a mask based on different algorithm, the number that you get it can be in different ranges. But in order to say I want to delete the last 10%, you need to project that whatever original space into a normalized range. You can do that in Houdini, but just I said traditionally too much. Before, there is this attribute remap. It's designed in a different way. It's designed to prevent you from getting surprises. So if you put an input there, you specify which attribute you want, you have to like manually click the compute range button for it to generate this input range. You need the input range in order to properly normalize them to the output 0 to 1 range. Also, it has a doesn't have a default like color visualization, so I can't really see the result if I want to change the remap ramp or something. I need to drop down another color node. So this is just a reflection of slightly different philosophy of Houdini, the main part of Houdini and SideFX Labs, which is the team I'm working on, is that we try to provide some ease of use tools for artists so that they don't have to struggle with some more, not necessarily difficult, just like two mundane tasks. They have to do it over and over again. For instance, one of the way to procedurally generate a mapping from a normalized range from a random range to a normalized range is you drop down like two attribute promote. One of them is responsible for promoting the original value to the maximum, and you drop down a second one, which give it the minimum. Then you take these two, and you have maximum and minimum. Then you know the number. Then you drop down maybe like a render or something, and you compute. In render, you can write a script. You compute what's the new appropriate range based on the min and max. So that's 3 nodes plus a script. Why not just do it with a node? So now we have an attribute normalized float, and a corresponding one to attribute normalized vector. So I'm going to jump to this thing I have over here to show them basically what they have. It's nothing too fancy, but just like one of the usability tools. So here, for float, for instance, we have a attribute on the faces called area, and we just want to see like what is the highest point in an area, and we wanted the result to go to 0 to 1 range. So for pure 0 to 1, you just literally just do direct drop of the node and you say, what's the class, what's the area, and the result is already in 0 to 1 range. There's nothing else you need to do. If you need to normalize a vector, let's say you have a velocity vector. Currently, it has length. It has different length. Some parts are smaller, some parts are longer. Let's say you wanted to compute a direction out of it, then you just drop down this vector version of this node, hook it up, say velocity, and it's normalized, just 2 clicks. If you wanted to, say, normalize the length of the vector instead of just set them all to unit vectors, you can just go here and turn off put unit vectors. Now they readjust the length of the vector to 0 to 1 range, so you can make it different, or like go the opposite direction, and all that stuff. And you can also just have a copy of what's the mean and max data here in the detail, in case you want to use it later. Here, give it that. All right, moving on. Back to Castle. So once we did some initial identification of these problematic parts, as you can see, they're everywhere here. And it's really like, it'll be a problem if in the gallery exhibition scenario, you put this giant castle there and you can walk close to it, you see all these problems, and it's really not nice. So we want to get rid of them by, the easy way is to like blast them out, like delete them first. Once you delete them, you end up with, I don't know if this will be the right node, but hopefully, you end up with holes everywhere. Yeah, you can see here. Holes. I need to fix the holes. So there is a node in Houdini that automatically patches holes. But before you run that node, you need to tell that node which points it needs to operate on, because there are still 40 million triangles and 20 million points. Most of the spaces doesn't need to run that operation. So you do want to save time. Yeah. It's not a few. We'll see how many there is. It's a portion of 20 million, but that's still a lot. This is when we realize, okay, there's a difference between there's a tool that does the thing versus there's a tool that now can handle nowadays work. Nowadays work is like high resolution geometry, because at the end of the pipeline, Unreal can render it. So we need to give the geometry to that. But in DCCs, you still have to process it. That technology hasn't magically improved over time, so we need to make smart decisions and make our tools better so that the tools can run things faster. If some default option doesn't do it as fast, there are some other avenues, which brings us to the next point. We create a new node called fast unshared. Unshared is Houdini way of saying a boundary point. It's like an edge that's not shared on both sides, so it's a boundary edge, which tells you where the holes are. Using the default group node, the Houdini's group node has an option to let you select unshared points or unshared edges. On this geometry, I'm not going to run it, because if I run it, it's going to take like 15 minutes based on last time I checked, or possibly crash this thing. So we decided, okay, let's try something new. One of the options we could do, and this is sort of a tidbit from working inside SideFX, that we can talk to our devs and figure out some of the less known facts. One of them is doing things in Vex could be faster than C++ node. So most of these nodes that you see, that's not like doesn't have a lock sign under it. It's like a C++ node. Well, with this trans sign, it's like an HDA, it's a network. So the C++ nodes are fast in most cases, but often you run into situations where if you write your own render script, you might end up being faster due to how things are processed. So in this one, we basically just used our own script, as you can see. Okay, one second. Let me just script this first. This script would take about 10 seconds. Oh, there we go. So there are 200,000 of these that are unshared points. Still a lot. but the scripting time is drastically faster than using the original group node. So we released this node with all the functionality you probably need for checking on shared stuff or the different types of geometry you want. You specify the name, and you can also like output this identity as an integer attribute instead of a group. But let's take a quick look of what's this. What's the not so deep magic here? It's just pretty much this one line of code, and this line of code does the computation, and it does it pretty fast. And for some reason, it's much faster than the counterpart. The logic here is also very simple. All that code is saying, and back to what Ivan was saying earlier, that one of the advantages of doing this kind of high demand project in Houdini is that if you hit a wall, you can try to work around it. You can like if existing solution is not good enough, we often like find ourselves writing our own solutions. Unfortunately, all of these solutions are not thrown away. They get rolled into tools that everybody else can use now.
With the help of some magic, you can do something, right?
Yeah.
Always the magic in there.
So if this is like a face, let's say this is 4 faces here, facing this way, you can quickly observe that there is equal amount of face as there are edges. And that's pretty much the main criteria we're checking here. We're checking on a point, this function, the point can tell you how many faces it's connected to. It can also tell you how many other points it's connected to. And you can check the number between these two. If they are not equal, then it's not like a manifold surface, or it's not shared. So if you have an open edge here, for instance, if this is nothing, then you have 3 edges and 2 faces. It can get a little bit tricky if you have non-manifold geometry where the geometry is not perfect surface. But since that's the rare cases, we don't like completely. Actually, I'm not entirely sure in which one of those cases will be a problem, but I have a high suspicion that one of the manifold cases can trick this algorithm. But for most cases, it works. Then it does a quick conversion into different group type. So we start detecting point group, then we convert it into edge group or primitive group. So it's really fast. Alrighty. Now, currently we might need a solution here, but this node basically does the feeding of all these holes, and since there's so many of them, this node actually takes quite a bit to click. Fortunately, we have some cache. We're not going to click it live on stream. We're just going to jump to the result and talk about the next part. All right. This is one of those problems that we discover later. Like, I thought, yeah, there are theme parts, you just delete them, no problem. Once you delete them, patch the holes, no problem. Then there are holes that they cannot patch because they're shaped like this. It's not really like a proper hole. It's like a bridge. I don't know if you can see it clearly. It's almost like 2 holes joined together and sharing 2 points. And the algorithm cannot figure out how to patch this together. And there's a lot of these very terrible geometry. Or this one, for instance. And you can't blame the algorithm. You're like, yeah, I can understand the algorithm cannot do this. Like, what is this? Yeah. All right. So we basically split these points so that they become their independent patches and not considered like the same continuous geometry anymore. And once they're splitted, they could be optionally deleted. Some like free flowing parts can go away. Then we can try to patch it again. And we can go to our second clean version. I can skip some. This version pretty much will be a more improved version. But at the end, after another version of similar cleaning, we wrap this thing up into a watertight geometry due to the volume processing we need to do later. So here is what it looks like after we kind of just create a simple box around it to box it up. Now it becomes watertight. And we know it's watertight because all the holes that we saw earlier on the top of the surface has been patched. The reason of this watertight requirement is later on we will patch this thing into a volume in order to merge different parts. And when you turn polygonal surface into a volume representation, you cannot have something like this, because if it has an opening, the volume is going to create its going to shape like that. It's going to create a complete wrap around it instead of like this shape that I wanted. Oh, actually, you can see some of these fixes here. Little, I don't know.
The fix was amazing.
Little balls of stuff. Like what happens here is that there is a tiny hole here or some problematic geometry, and we just decide to, okay, I'm gonna spawn a little. It's like a ball of like a mozzarella or something. We can put it there so you can block the hole. We want to eventually combine some of this workflow into like a master tool that has all of this functionality just wrapped around inside of it. Well, the journey is a bit difficult because it's very situational. There's so many different things you need to do. While most of it is procedural, still like to decide when need to apply what, and some of the operations are kind of expensive given the geometry you throw at it. We're working on it. That's what I'm saying, to provide a good solution. Oh, sorry. One interesting part. We'll provide a prelude to the next big chapter. Is this terrible geometry? No offense to Ivan Scanning, because you said it's terrible yourself.
Yeah, that's terrible. Actually, that area was completely overgrown. Like the grass in there was like a meter and a half tall. It's like it's a miracle that's not, most of it is not there. But yeah,
I used it was like such a pain. We tried so many different ways, and I'm just gonna skip to the end and show you the way that eventually works. So this is the ideal situation we want to see. I turn on the matcap shader that you can find here. You can see the topology change a bit better. So this is ideal ground, and you move over here. It's this nightmare. Like, okay, what do we do here? We kind of talked about, okay, what if we just get rid of the ground entirely, and but there are some pros and cons over that. In order to get rid of the ground entirely, you have to kind of cut between the ground and the castle, and it's not easy here. Like you can see, here's a bridge. Like what, you can't really cut very cleanly. But also the ground has nice texture and nice little path here too. We don't want to throw that away entirely. We don't preserve a lot of this. And this is a prelude to our next tool. It was kind of introduced some time ago as under the name Spectral feature transfer. Now it kind of got into being involved into two tools. One is Spectral feature extract, and the next one is going to be called attribute transfer by anchor, and I will explain what that is. So the process roughly looks like this for context. So this is this very problematic area. We're gonna, since there's no easy way to clean it by filling hole or anything, we're gonna very aggressively remesh it by turning them into volume first, because volume is this nice medium where it can merging a lot of those imperfections and generate a smooth surface. Then we can convert this volume back to geometry and try to project it back to the ground. Because the volume is always going to be fatter than the original geometry, then it becomes fat, then you have to project it right back down, which is like very rudimentary, that kind of proximity-based projection, resulting in this look. It could be very stylized, artistic, but that's not what we're going for. Then you can smooth it, which is much better. Now it looks like snow. All right, it looks natural now, but it doesn't fit exactly what we have here, because there's no detail here at all. We want the detail, and there's nothing here. So we're looking at this part of the geometry, and we're looking at the other part, and we thought, is it possible to somehow get the detail over here onto this smooth surface? And that's what the spectral feature transfer is about. The reason it's called spectral feature, it refers to the spectrum of frequencies. So we can see over here, there's high frequency detail, and the low frequency detail of the ground is it's pretty flat. There's not too much mid or low frequency detail. The smooth version is also, low frequency, but we just want the high frequency part of this geometry and somehow move it over there. So you can think of it as, let's say, a height map. A height map have all that information on the texture that can allow you to give detail to a high resolution mesh. Except in that case, you will need a texture mapping. You need a one-to-one your texture maps to the sample that you're providing stuff and map it over here too. That's one of the problems. We don't have the mapping. The shape of these two doesn't necessarily match, and this is a slightly better case where it's just sort of like a rectangular strip of ground. When we're thinking about how can we make this tool be more generic, that means what if I wanted to map a thing from a plane to the face of a tree or an apple, just to complete topology, but we just want the frequency to be transferred over. And how do we do that? So I'm trying to show you the first part of the tool called the spectral feature extract. Let me open it. So it's going to take a moment. By the way, you can find the tool in our GitHub. It's currently on GitHub, and it's going to be in tomorrow's build of labs. It's recently committed. Also, next Tuesday, Houdini is going to have next production build. So a lot of these tools that I'm going to be talking about today will have a cleaned up release on the next Tuesday. If they are not already released, part of them are already out there. Just a few new ones. All right, here we go. So let's see. This is passive geometry, and I'm going to show you an example of transfer two type of detail. One is a float type detail. Let's say this one-dimensional noise I'm adding to it. I'm drawing it gray. It's just two different level of noise. If I'm looking at this visualization based on that value, this is one version of it. This is a different one. This is like a higher resolution, lower resolution. And in nature, a lot of times the noise you see is not a noise of the same frequency. It's multiple layers of frequency combined. So that's where this tool is applicable. Is trying to go to nature, go to your scan assay, go to your photogrammetry assay, and try to find these nice natural details, and somehow take them out of the mesh. And there's no height map ready for you yet. You have to take that out of the mesh. So let's do that. The other example is, for instance, like the position. If I don't want to take the float, I want to take this position like this, and I put it on top of something else. Then we need to somehow define the position. And the position is a bit trickier because position is like a point data somewhere in space, right? Like exactly what are you taking out of it? If you think about a one-dimensional data, like the float version of it, it's more easy to think about what exactly you are extracting in terms of frequency. So let's say you have a low frequency data like this, and you have a high frequency data like this. And if you combine them, excuse my drawing, you might end up with something like this, right? And you want to, you basically want to decompose that in a way to get either this or you will get that. And this is, straightforward in 1D. Then in 3D, what do you do? Like it's not immediately clear. So there are two options you could do. One is to, if you set this to vector as its default value, you can set it to float. I'll show you. But if you set it to vector, you can choose if you're extracting a 1D frequency in the projection direction. So in this plane, for instance, we can say the projecting direction is just this direction. It's sort of up facing direction. And I want to get the projection. So if you project your 3D vectors onto that direction, it becomes a 1D value. It's basically the dot product of that. So if your projection vector is a unit vector and you dot another thing onto it, it becomes a float. And once it becomes a float, the same process runs as processing the float type of extraction. The other version is that you just forget about that. We're just going to extract the 3D frequencies, which is also possible. It's hard to think about, but it's also possible. Now, like, how does this extraction happen? Has something to do with, I'm not super, like, I know, Tina, you call me a wizard, but I know the people who work at SideFX. I'm nothing compared to some of our R&D folks. But the extraction, it's similar to a heat equation. It's a partial differential equation. So in terms of heat, let's say if this thing describes the heat noise on like a metal rod or something, let's say we have a metal rod here and they have the uneven heat in different regions, and you just leave it there and let the heat dissipate. The heat basically would diffuse across this space. Then they will become more uniform over time. The more time you give it, the more uniform it becomes. But the nice property is that the different frequencies, they don't dissipate at the same rate. The higher frequency, they are gone faster. So if you watch the time, essentially the higher frequency would be gone, then the medium frequency is still there, and given enough time, the medium frequency is also gone, then you only have the low frequency left. If you almost give it infinite amount of time, they will become completely uniform. So that can be applied to the 1D data, 3D data, whatever. So here, what I did is first I give it a projection direction, which just points up. Then we can try this 1D frequency in projection direction instruction. I just need to provide the attribute that says which direction is that. So for a case, let's say if you are doing this instruction on the surface of for apple, for instance, you have nice textures on the apple for some reason. A very wrinkly apple, I will not eat it. Let's say if you have a wrinkly apple, you want it. I want the texture.
Basically an orange, right?
Yeah. The funny part is that I do have an art degree, and this is not really. This is probably pissing off my art professor.
I think it's beautiful.
Anyway, so the you don't have a uniform direction to say, okay, this is my projection direction. But the projection direction is not defined as a single vector. It's defined on a per point basis. Which basically, each point, when it tries to do the extraction of the frequency, it uses that projection direction. So you just need to, before you run this node, you smooth out this apple so it becomes very smooth, representing, let's say, like a low poly geometry you want to transfer to or something like that. Then you get a normal generated on that smooth apple, and you use that smooth normal as projection direction. That's why the default value here is kind of give you the hint and create a smooth normal. Then you can use that widget. So let's see what it looks like. So when you turn this node on, by default, it will give you a visualization. So this original color, and it give you a visualization. So what is this visualization? It's saying this is all the frequency of detail you're going to see. So this is like the red is highest point and the blue is the lowest point. But it's not just about the red and the blue and the green stuff. It's about the frequency of the change that you can see. This is currently one level of frequency. If I change this, it becomes different. You can see there's much less variation. If you want to go like extract the lower or medium frequency of it, at the beginning, this is sort of a medium level. If I bring the lower end closer, you can see there's a lot more yellow scattered around versus the extreme case, and I can up the time scale too. It becomes something like that. And that's some level of frequency. So essentially what the node is trying to do is it run two versions of the diffusion, and they compare the result between them. And there's a time difference between two versions of diffusion. And what is different between these two versions is the spectrum of frequencies that was eroded between these two times. There's different model too. One model is a diffusion model, which uses a proper differential equation under the hood. And the smooth model uses the smooth node, which has more topographical support. So you can choose to prefer some scale or curvature, but the basic idea is also similar. You can extract different frequencies. Now let's see what it also inverted. Inverted basically means that now I'm subtracting the high frequency version with the low frequency. In 3D, it doesn't have the projection, but you can still see the noise pattern in difference. Let me turn on something. Set to remap. Okay. So this is very noisy stuff. You can extract this out, or you could go. Let me use a diffusion as a better example. Okay, that's easier to see. So the two methods does produce different results. So you can pick which one give you better control, which one you prefer. Noisy, low frequency detail, smooth. And in between, you can just slide this around to pick what you want. Because this is limited, then you can use a time scale to globally adjust it. Okay. In the 3D case, we also provide two output measures so you can kind of look at it. So this is what it looks like with the current version of high frequency erosion. It can be kind of sensitive. So if it's too sensitive, we can just bring this down. Then there's the lower version, so you can visually compare exactly what you're getting. In the dual outputs, it's pretty much, it looks the same as the input geometry, except that it puts the data onto it. It generates this additional attribute called extracted float. And this extracted float can be used basically to project onto something else. And that's where sort of the second tool comes in. The second tool we'll talk about how to do it discontinuously. One more thing here is, what was I going to say? Oh, here, you can freeze out some areas. So here I have a selected area like this. I can put that in a point group, but here is a different point group. And I can say, do not run in that group in the constraint points. I can say, select the group. You can see that part. It's basically not eroded in the lower end. So you can pick which version you want to use the constraint. Cool. All right. Going back to our example here, how do we do the transfer? So because there's no spatial continuity when we do the transfer, this is sort of before and after, before, after. And this is, we selected the area as a grid source and we want to move them over here and they have no match whatsoever. So we use an anchor-based approach. Think about placing anchors in two places. One is on the source, one is on the target, and they create this mapping. And we're basically going to go in different ways. In this example, what you're seeing is a radial way. You sample the result from this part. You're not entirely grabbing the geometry here. You're just grabbing the patch of geometry and get the extracted data as I was showing you. Get the extracted data. Let's say that's some sort of bumpy height map. Then you apply that extracted spectrum of data over here. Then you end up with this. Basically add a little bit of up and down to the ground and color too. So here it shows both grabbing the noise in topology as well as color. Then you keep doing that. Until you fill out the space. And the reason there's not much seam, you don't see the seam between the patches, is because there is a radial fade. It's a pretty common concept that the influence of a stamp is highest in the center and it kind of fades towards the end. So if you have a different stamp over here, they're not going to disagree with each other too much because they're like faded out. Once you have enough, you get better. So one of the things we're working on right now is how to speed this up. Currently, because each stamp, we don't want the stamp to stamp on top of each other at the same time, so we have to do it in order. But when you do this in order in a for loop, it takes too much time. So thinking about if there's a way to make it faster. So basically, if we can find a set of points, a set of anchors that we know they're not gonna overstepping each other, then they can be run at the same time. So we can reduce the iteration loop. So hopefully, by the time next week when the two come out, I will have solved that. All right. Let me check my notes for the next topic. So it points, and there's some merging stuff you've already seen. Let's just go to the next part. I have a few minutes left. UVs. So we cut out this chunk, and because the whole geometry is quite large and we wanted to test out how to automate the UV generation process, there are a few concerns, and this is all in tandem with what we're going to use at the end of the pipeline in our engine. So despite Nanite kind of disregard some of the limitations in poly counts, when it comes to UVs, you don't want the UV to be too fragmented. You want the UV to have hopefully as little seams as possible, because a seam is not just a problem in terms of adding additional vertices. It does. Every time you have a UV seam there, the vertex has to be split, even though you don't see it. The other thing is the texture. And when you think about the texture, if you map it, the number of texels on the texture reduces, and you can reduce to the point where the resolution of your UV islands become too small compared to the texel size. So the UV seams start to look a bit weird. That's the two obvious reasons where you want to improve the UV unwrapping. So here you can see as a basic unwrap, it has some issues. Some of, let's say, texel density doesn't match, and this area has a low texel density, and there's a much higher texel density. And there's also UV distortion issues. So this red area is very distorted, and so as the blue one, we want everyone to try and look in the white region. That'll be good. So the other part is actually UV overlap. Let's see if that is present in this case. You can see it here. This is the area. Let me turn off distortion if you can see better. So here's the UV overlap. That they're sharing texels because of this sort of shape. Overlap tend to happen when you have a island that has how do I put it? Let's say if you have an island like this, right, and there's some high distortion in this area, and often the algorithm, in order to avoid the high distortion, it will try to cut through it. So when you cut through it, there's a new seam here, and they will start to fold over each other in order to relax the distortion. So it creates a fold like this. And that's where it comes from. You can see it's a fold. So we created a way to basically identify and remove these. We need further work on this, but this is the first pass. Sort of the way we use the algorithm we use to identify is sort of based on the limitation of a texture size. So if you look at the UI here, you can set your detection resolution, basically like the maximum texture resolution you're going to use. So essentially, one test sample equals one texel. You don't go higher than that. We shoot a massive amount of rays, and it's not as expensive as it sounds to shoot them through these spaces, and we have to do some pre-processing first to make sure that the detection in 3D is actually not yielding wrong results, so we kind of make them bumpy or something. So in this red area, the test ray is going to pass this area like at least twice. Then we kind of know, okay, this area has overlap because it's not a single detection. Then we can cut them out and distribute them elsewhere. That's one of the tools that's already out there. All right, next one, I might have to wrap it up real quick, is soon to be finished tool called texel density. We have this tool before, we're just doing another improvement on it and add additional functionality to it. So here you can kind of roughly see a result already. So this is the previous texel density, and this is the more uniform one. And the gray area is when we applied the UDIMs. If you look at here, it's the UDIMs. Some of the gray ones are too large to fit in the UDIM. So we identify them, we need to do something else about them. So apart from improvement on the text density UI here, that we added more stuff for you to more intuitively check what is the target text density and everything. The main part that's a bit interesting, I think, is splitting these large islands. So let's say this one, for instance. It starts off somewhere like this, single island. Then we need to somehow cut it. So we start with a cluster. This gives a general division of, you can decide how many slices you want to cut it into. Then you result in this kind of edges. Now the edges are kind of bad. It's very jagged. I don't know if I can show. Yeah, you can see this actually the points here. And we want to smooth edges because all these winding, jagged edges will not be as good as they could have been on the upper geometry. So there are two nodes for this. One is already out, and then next one will be out too. The first one is called cluster refine. What cluster refine would do is the user interface is very simple. The default option is pretty good, but you have advanced options to tweak it. Basically, it looks beyond the immediate neighbors of the triangle that are bordering a cluster border. Then it searches in the extended area, and it uses weighting, some weighting algorithm, including edge length and everything, to determine if that island should merge into a different one. So let me see if I can find an example real quick. While the file is trying to open, I'm gonna talk about the second tool. This one is good. It's decent. It's not perfect. It's decent enough that it can run on relatively high amount of data. The more perfect one will be slightly more expensive, but it does generate a super smooth result. So here is the result of the better one. These are the boundaries. The new boundaries are much smoother compared to the previous one. The previous one over here, especially this part. And this is the new one. So what we did for this higher version is to identify these islands first. Then we identify these kind of points where multiple, sort of like this sort of kind of tri-state looking area where 3 islands merge together or 2 merge together, share a boundary. Basically, we know that there is a point that needs to run from this point to that point. Same goes to this point that needs to go from here to there, and so on and so forth. So identify all these destination points throughout the border and in the center of the geometry. Then we can just disregard whatever's already here and run a find shortest path algorithm to go through the topology and try to find what's the shortest path you can go from one point to the other. So it just took these 2 steps. First step, you establish the destination and starting points. Second step, you run a much better algorithm that smooths out the border. All right, this one is opened up. So here is sort of a before and after of just the generic cluster refine. So this is before. You have very jaggedy clusters. And if you refine it, it's smooth. You can also run on, for instance, square shaped ones. So here's like here's a before, and here's after. You can change different settings to see which one you like better. Oh yeah, this one is more for if you have lots of clusters, you need to run this operation. You use this node. If you wanted to do something really refined for this kind of either cutting UV islands or use it on just general type of geometry, we can use this new one, which is going to be called smooth partition. I think I'm out of time. It's 4:04. Interesting time. Should I wrap this up?
If you have a little bit more to talk about on this, feel free. I don't want you to feel too rushed on getting through it.
All right. I have like 1 or 2 topics I can quickly go through them. I don't want to take up too much time
Yeah,
of the
absolutely.
audience too. All right. So
Much
one of
interesting
them.
stuff in here.
Yeah, we're pretty much moving on to the UV category, right? So we said before how measuring curvature has its uses versus measuring like the concavity and stuff, regardless of topology. But when it comes to UV islands, the curvature actually becomes a bit important, because the definition of a distorted point on the UV space is essentially. All right, it's going to test my drawing skill again. Let's say you have a kind of surface like this, and there's a very pinchy, pointy point. Now, if you imagine, if there's no cuts in this area, and there's just not a perfect way to preserve the UV in a way that it doesn't distort around this part, because the topology, there's just so much surface in this area, but in the projected area, it's relatively small. And the ground footprint is small, but there's so much surface right here. So the solution to this kind of general problem is to identify points like this first, then cut it, like have a seam runs through it. Once it cuts, there is zero distortion. So any point that's been cut always have zero distortion. That's where the curvature stuff comes in. We developed a node called a fast Gaussian curvature. It's similar to the measure node, which has a Gaussian curvature option when you measure curvature here. That's the default Houdini node. This node, as the name suggests, it's a bit faster. It uses an equivalence method to compute the curvature of something by checking something called Andrew deficit. It's a very interesting topic. Andrew deficit is like when you have a cube, like so. The cube is not a super distorted shape, but it's slightly distorted. If you look at this, there are 3 right angles around this point. So each of the right angles 90 degrees. If you add them all up, it's 270 degrees. If it's a perfectly flat surface around a point, let's say, let's subdivide this one more time. Look at this point, it's perfectly flat, there's no distortion at all. You can see the angle that it makes up is 360. Between 360 and 270, there's 90-degree deficit there. And this Andrew deficit is a good measurement of how distorted that point is locally. So that's sort of our shortcut. Why this node is faster is that we use this equivalent method to check the surface distortion. We compute the Andrew deficit, and then we give you a result. So that's one thing. The next thing has some. It's interesting because we used Crypto's asset as benchmark. MetaStrand's asset is amazing. A lot of times you can bring them in directly into your game and assemble the thing. We are interested in customers who come to us and say, we have our own assets, we have our own scan. Like you are here, he's incredible, difficult to process scan. And we have to deal with that,
Sure.
which is not provided. All right, so this short thing here, it's we downloaded from Procedural MetaStrand, and the seam you see here, the UV islands, it's already available, and we're trying to basically target it. And this is sort of our working solution. I can just have a little bit of time to show you the result of it. Here you see some. Let's see where will be the best one to show. Maybe this one. All right. So you see some of these red spots. These red spots are just different methods that we tried, including checking curvature, including sometimes checking the concavity or something, and see if it lines up with the, I don't know how it was crafted, maybe procedural, maybe handcrafted version from Crypto. Sorry, I'm trying to find a version where where it shows the original lineup. Yeah, this one does. So we were kind of surprised when this came out. So this red one is our method Procedural identified. Here, it's everywhere. Like we have lots of all these red spots. Not every one of them, but plenty of them runs exactly through either the intersections or directly on the lines of the original UV that we got from the asset. So that's sort of current progress. We'll keep looking at it and how to complete this pipeline. And hopefully with that, we can create a new version of semi-automated UV unwrap for organic shapes. I'm thinking that the organic shapes and hard surface modeling, they have different requirements. So that probably going to be two tools. One of them is going to be focused on how to UV unwrap organic shapes, which is perfect for scans and photogrammetry assay like this. But yeah, that's a preview of little experiments we currently have ongoing. Oh, that's my little 10 minutes overtime section. Thank you so much.
It was awesome. It was worth every minute.
Thank you.
It was amazing. Amazing to see the magic happen.
Yes. And I know we were joking around a little bit about the Microsoft Paint stuff there, but chat even mentioned it, and I fully agree that it was actually very helpful being able to have a visual there for a lot of the concepts. So thank you for including those. It was very helpful.
I do it all the time. When I was like making some training videos for production, it's just like people joke about it all the time.
It's very helpful, very much appreciated, and I do expect my fully framed copy of each and every one of them that I can
Okay.
have hung proudly in the background or something. Well, awesome. So most of the questions that we got throughout the show, actually, both of you kind of naturally answered through your demos. So I have just one for you that I'm going to pose to both of you to get the two different kind of perspectives on it. But do you have any advice for any of the viewers or developers who might be interested in pursuing a similar project to this?
You want to go first because you're early on in the pipeline?
No. No, let me think about it a bit.
Okay. All right, I'll spitball something while you think about it. I do advise people to think about what's your end goal first. So what level of quality you're expecting? Is it like this guy, which just goes insane and everything, which is cool. I love it. Or different platform, different resolution. It's a big question. Then think about what kind of technology you're using and how does that technology behave. So we're using it with Unreal Engine. Look up how Unreal handles a lot of these situations. For instance, if you are interested in good lighting quality, you might have a choice between ray tracing or lumen or whatever options you might be able to try out and see which one works best. Then sometimes that imposes a restriction on the asset. I heard, maybe this information has been updated, but I heard that in order to get that hardware traced shadow, if some people prefer that, you have to keep the resolution of geometry a bit low, because they can't trace against millions and millions of triangles. That's something to think about, just the end of it. The other thing we're kind of banned out about a bit, also, hopefully it doesn't come off as a sales pitch, about a tool like Houdini is like a tool that's flexible enough for you to experiment with. A tool doesn't stop you where if an option is not offered, then you're stuck. Unreal does the same thing. It has a lot of like scriptability and flexibility. You can do that. So that's like the choice of which kind of platform you want to be working on, and how good the support that platform provides. It's also a good thing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your turn.
Yeah,
Your
of
turn.
course that's
Okay,
fine. How dare you promote the place that you work at on my show?
Yeah, I'll give more artistic advice since I'm an artist. But basically, what important is to realize what your scope is and understand where to stop, which is some clear issues probably. Yeah, but like we knew from the start that we are going for like insane quality, and this is what is important to us because, well, you kind of represent those things. So, but obviously, and I think it might have been asked in the chat if I could check it out, but a lot of stuff could have been probably easier and faster. But it's always about like striving for the best and diminishing returns, right? Like as an art, like you do 80% of job in 20% of time, and then other like top stuff it takes for ages, and here it may be even like 10 to 90, which is like if you're really going for the quality, then it's getting insanely complex and hard to achieve. And like in terms of investments in general, money, time, hours, everything, this is like complicated stuff. And never underestimate the technology if you're doing something like that, because it's gonna hit you back really, really hard. Like a lot of things that can be done fast and easy will not be like that, definitely. And there's like through all the steps that have been there, laser scanning, photogrammetry, Houdini, everything, every single step was way more complicated than it looks like, especially if you really want to something particular, because it's easy to get something, some accidents when you're not expecting. I think that's talking about, like, if you're talking about AI art, it's easy to get something cool if you just like know rough direction. But if you want something really precise, a lot of the time it's easier to do it by hand. And here's the same, like by the process of doing it, we had a lot of interesting results, but that wasn't the goal. So yeah, it's hard to make something really advanced and precise.
Yeah, there's so many interesting lessons learned along the way. The consistent thing is that we always get caught in, like, our expectation always gets surpassed by the reality. It's always something
Yeah,
around the corner,
sure.
and it's fascinating to us because we are like of the mindset where, like, problems, it's interesting, we like it, we want to solve it. But obviously in production, given what kind of production, maybe you're rushing on time, or maybe you're in a production environment where you want to build a tool sets, you want to have like lasting things you can rely on, then you could do something similar. You pursue the quality so that in the future you can benefit from the stuff you already have.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I first and foremost want to thank both of you so much for taking the time to come and be on the show and show us this incredible project that you've been working on. It's genuinely so interesting to actually watch basically the process start to finish of how you did this over. I feel maybe I don't want to take away from the amount of work that you've put into it, because we got to watch the whole process from start to finish in just a couple hours, when obviously it's taken more than just a couple hours for the both of you. So I feel privileged being able to see the complete pipeline that you've built over this process.
No, yeah, too kind. But yeah, there's a lot of things
Thank you so much.
we throw into the trash by the time we tried it.
No, for sure.
So it all sounds rosy here because everything is working, but
yeah. But it's turned out fantastic, and there's also some really cool tools that are going to be available for other people to be able to use now too because of it. Which you said next Tuesday, right, is when they can nab those.
Yeah, some of them is already out. There are a few that's newer. A chunk of them is already available.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, for us, it's only the beginning, right? Now we have cool scan. Yes, the first step is done, and there's so many more to do. For producing all the content, especially like the educational stuff and all that, which is like the whole purpose and the whole goal. So yeah, this is these first steps, but they are the most important ones to make the things right. Start the best you possibly could. So yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, another general piece of. Sorry about the delay. Another general piece of advice is, be friends with cool people, like my friend here.
For sure.
always fun. You get interesting collaboration, interesting challenges.
Yeah. It's nice.
We know each other since the first Castle he showed like 3 years ago. It feels like a much longer time, even though it's about 3 or 4 years. But forever.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Anyway,
And look what it's turned into.
We never actually got back to the Unreal image itself, like the scene.
Oh,
yeah, I feel
yeah.
like.
Yeah, the scene.
Well, that's why I left it.
Pretty
So
similar.
if it's gonna be enough time,
yeah.
I think people have seen enough how things are done. So yeah, the Unreal scene that everyone saw in the beginning is basically just a representation in the engine of the castle, of the current state of it. That it's running like a charm. I mean, yeah, I can show it in a minute.
Yeah, it also post the high-res image in like in ArtStation, so we wouldn't see.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely do it. Yeah, so you can check it like tomorrow or the day after. I'll at last post something. I've been postponing the process of posting a lot of stuff, a lot of work I've done recently because, yeah, I don't know, should fix that.
I mean, if you want to show the final thing altogether real quick, I have no qualms with that.
Yeah, let's do it in a minute. Let's do it fast, like a fast solution. Okay, I'm gonna switch my screen. Like really fast. It's gonna be something like this. Yeah. So as you see, it runs in Unreal, and like you can fly around, and it's smooth. But yeah, as you can guess, it was done to serve as a piece for only one angle. So if you go closer, you can see there's a lot of stuff done, especially this amazing thing that blocks the light for you. It's like lighting is really important. But yeah, this is the scene, and it runs. And actually, this is interesting because it shows like that you don't really need a lot of stuff to make something nice looking. This is only like 2 variations of trees and maybe 3 rocks and the grass. So stuff is pretty simple, and everything like there is nothing insane. Some of it is just pixels. Some of it is like other stuff that was on Epic from time to time. Even like the skies is the default sky. So if you open the default scene, this is the volumetric default sky you get. And no optimization here, and this thing runs. So yeah, like you don't have to be extremely technical to do something really nice looking in Unreal Engine, especially like with Nanite and Lumen. Like it helps to solve so many issues. So like this was done in a day. The whole symbol was assembled in a day as just a demo how things would look like. But it's
can you show like the lights from sort of inside the look you showed me before? It looks pretty amazing from
that.
Yeah.
Sound like this. This is like real life. I've been here so many times. It does look like real life. Yeah, but like new technology is amazing. So if you really like know what you're doing and get some amazing stuff. So yeah, it's something like that.
This is awesome. I'm so glad that we were able to see the full realized project at the end there. And I am so excited to see this continued and to see what the other sites that you visit end up looking like. And I hope that you continue this for a while, because just the few that you've shown today are incredible. And I think the idea of preserving these sites, and especially if we could get lots of other people on board and preserve sites from all over, from different time periods and in different states, it could be really, really fascinating and a great way to be able to share these historical moments with other people, especially in the future. So
yeah, it would be amazing for sure.
Idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
again. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
So much.
There is such a slight delay.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for hosting us.
Of course. I am so happy that you were both able to come on today and talk about this. Genuinely, it was so much fun. I learned so much. My head is going to explode from the amount of information that it has absorbed, which is always a great thing. So yeah, thank you both so much for coming on. Also, thank you everyone who came and watched and participated in chat. The show isn't what it is without you and you being here and experiencing all of this with us. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and watch and hang out with us. Very much appreciate it. If anybody hopped in the middle or near the end, don't worry, you didn't miss out on anything because we post all of our streams in video format on both our Twitch and YouTube account at Unreal Engine. And you can also keep up with us at Unreal Engine on all social media, as well as come say hi on our forums where you can get the latest news and also find all of the links associated with today's stream, including where you can find and follow these two incredible guests as well. So go hang out and see cool stuff, and we'll see the rest of you next Thursday. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.